Morgen, der noch vorwärts lacht. Und keiner von uns weiß, was sie hier wirklich macht. Wir Mädels werden schnell, nur keine Fragen stellen.
So, Mr. Ginges or Danny? Danny's
Yeah,
okay?
call me Danny.
All right. It's very nice to meet you. Can you tell us something about yourself and your connection to Atomic?
Oh, okay. Something about myself. Well, Atomic was the first musical I wrote. It was pretty much the first stage production I've written, apart from something I wrote in high school. My background's like advertising, so my whole working career was as a copywriter in advertising. I've written lots of television commercials and print commercials, but yeah, yeah. And I've tried to write some films, but actually Atomic started as a film. But yeah, this was my first stage production, and my first musical.
So you're an Australian author and artist, but you came all the way from Australia to Germany for this play. What was the reason for that?
I've never been to Germany. I've wanted to go to Germany. I think my great-grandmother was from Austria. Like I've had family from around here, and I've never been. And it was a good excuse to come. And also, like we try to come to all the shows, or at least the openings of the shows, because we learn a lot. The different audience. Sometimes we learn it and we rewrite things, based on things we learn. So it's a living thing. The show, so it's still living.
There's also a second person who planned to come here, but a positive COVID test prevented that. Which role did he play in this project?
Oh, Philip? No. Well, I think he wanted to come, but his wife was, not his wife, his partner was. She's a school teacher, and she couldn't come, and it's a big. He wouldn't have come for very long, and it wasn't. It was kind of too much. So, yeah. But which role did he? So he's a composer. So we worked very closely together. I didn't know him before we started on this project. I'd written it, and people said, "Oh, well, you need to find a composer because you don't have any music." So, and I had a friend in New York said, "Don't bother." No, he's an Australian friend working in New York, and he said, "Don't bother with Australia because you won't find anybody in Australia. Everybody, come to New York and you'll find a composer." Anyway, I didn't want to go to New York, and I asked everybody if they knew a composer, or if they, and eventually somebody said, "Oh, you should speak to Philip Foxman," and we met, and we got on very well. We've become best friends, and we work very well together.
Wir machen Löcher für die Donuts. Ich für die Glühwürmchen.
This means you planned to write a musical without having actual musical experience?
I had no idea how to write a musical. I didn't know what was involved at all. I knew how to write like film, but I knew how to work with musicians and composers because I'd done that. But as far as a musical, it was like what I'd done was like running around the block, and writing a musical is like climbing Mount Everest. There's a lot to learn, and I learned it, the hard way. But
yeah, I see that. We can talk about this in a later part, and I'm pretty interested in that part. But for the audience, at first, I think you can tell us something about what Atomic is actually about. So maybe you can summarize us the plot again a bit.
Okay, so Atomic kind of centers on one scientist, Leo Szilard, and I learned about Leo. I was, as growing up in the 1960s, we were, very aware of, the possibility of atomic war. And I was quite scared about that. And then you know, when I was in my 30s or 40s, I thought, I don't know very much about how that started, so I did some research and I came across this scientist, Leo Szilard, who I'd never heard of. And I thought, you know, I'd heard of Oppenheimer and I'd heard of Teller. Szilard I'd never heard of. And the more I read about him, the more I thought, actually, he's very important. Like, the bomb still would have happened without Oppenheimer. But with without Szilard, it wouldn't have happened. And I thought, you know, so I kind of got a bit angry that he'd been forgotten by history. And I think the anger kind of was my motivation for writing it. Like, anger is a good motivator sometimes.
Yeah, that's true, I guess.
Let go of it, though.
I mean, yeah, it's perfect for emotional stories. Yeah. But what is the actual plot of the story?
So it's about this scientist, Leo Szilard, and he's very gifted. You know, he's gifted, and he knows he's gifted as a scientist, and he wants to use that gift to help humanity. And so, you know, he gets involved in atomic physics, which is a very new area, you know, with the idea that it's going to, you know, give energy to mankind and let mankind explore different solar systems, and that was his motivation to start. And then, you know, through circumstance, through the war, and through the fear that Germany would develop. Yeah, I mean, Germany was leading the world in nuclear physics. All the scientists were in Berlin or in Germany. Like Oppenheimer was in Germany, was in Berlin. Teller, Szilard, Einstein. You know, Einstein. They were all there, and Germany led the world, you know, in that field. So the fear was that there would be war, Germany would get a bomb, and that would be the end of the war. So, yeah, that was his motivation as well, fear. Fear. And through that, he, you know, instead of saving mankind through science, he helped bring into the world a weapon that you know, destroyed 2 cities and still threatens mankind. So it's kind of a bit of a... can't remember the word. Yeah, he didn't get what he wanted. He wanted to save the world, and he ended up doing something that threatened the world. Irony, that was the word. It's kind of an ironic story.
You needed many words to tell us this plot, but the historic events that time have been way more. I mean, we're talking about years of developments, decisions, and I would not know where to start when writing a script about this historic development.
Right.
I mean, how have you tried to achieve this, to put their consistent story in one single play about this whole historic development?
Okay, so well, I mean, the main focus is on this one character. So it's all the you can't cover the whole. Everything to do with the atomic bomb, because there were probably hundreds of thousands of people involved with it, and they all had a story. So yeah, I mean, we're just focusing on the plot turns on this one character, Leo Szilard. So the story starts, when he's leaving Germany. Like he was when he left, like he was telling all his colleagues they had to leave, and nobody believed him. He had kind of a gift of being able to kind of foresee what was coming, and he was panicking about, you know, that there's going to be war when everybody else was saying, "What are you talking about?" And
it answered the questions.
Okay.
Krieg, der uns den Atem hielt, vorüber. Der Der Tag, nach dem wir suchten, ist nun da. Nach all dem gab es diese deutsche Bombe nie. Die Zahl der Toten geht in die
But still, there's so many things also happening in his life. Are there some special developments, or maybe we can call them highlights? I don't know if this word is right in this context, but some main events which you find especially interesting about his life.
Yeah, well, I guess the turning points were his decision to leave Germany. Then, when he was he went to London first. Then, when he was in London, he was another thing that was kind of made him angry. He went to he heard about a lecture. Ernest Rutherford, who was leading the field in atomic physics in Cambridge University in England, said nobody will ever get power out of the atom, like commercially. It's impossible. And when Szilard heard that, he got angry and he said, "How can he say it's impossible? He has, where's the science that says it's impossible?" And then when he was angry and thinking about it, he came up with this idea of a chain reaction. So the chain reaction is why Rutherford said it was impossible was because you need a lot of energy to split an atom, and you don't get as much energy out of the atom. And what Szilard had the idea of, if you could split an atom, that when it split, it would release 2 neutrons. So you only have to split 1, and then that one will split 2, will split 4, will split 8, and that will, create a lot of energy, very, very quickly. And he had this idea, and he took out a patent on this idea. But he didn't want Germany to know about the patent, so he took out a secret patent with the British Admiralty. So that was kind of that thought changed his whole life. And then, when he saw the war was coming, and he knew that if he stayed in England, he wouldn't be, someone who just come from Germany, he wouldn't be allowed to work on a war project because he was an enemy alien. So he said, I'll go to America. So he went to America, and and then when he was in America, he found out that the atom had been split in Berlin. The uranium atom had been split in Berlin, and once that was out, he said, well, they're going to, the bomb is inevitable. We better do it first. And then, he had to, as an enemy alien in America, he had to convince the American government to, they ended up putting $2 billion into this project. So it's a big ask for a government to do something, and they didn't know if it would work. But he got Einstein to write a letter to the president, and then it started, and we know what happened.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I didn't know that someone actually patented the nuclear chain reaction.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, when Szilard didn't get on with the army. Like, the army was in charge of the project, and Szilard thought they were getting in the way, because the army wanted secrecy, and the scientists they need to be able to talk to each other. So he said, he was always fighting with the army and always going up above. There was somebody, who he answered to, but he'd try and talk to the person above them, and they kicked him off the project at one stage, and he used the patents to get back on. So he said, I'll come back on. If you let me come back on, you can have my patents. Yeah.
Das Damoklesschwert hängt schon so lang über uns. Ein Funke reicht
wrote the story and Foxman composed the music.
Yeah.
What was that process like?
Oh, okay. So I hadn't really written lyrics before. So what I'd do is I'd write the lyrics to usually a Led Zeppelin song. So I'd have a Led Zeppelin song in my head, and I'd write the lyrics, and then I'd give the lyrics to Philip, but I wouldn't tell him the song, and he'd come back with something that wasn't Led Zeppelin, but was very, yeah. The first song I gave him as a test out was a song called Headlights, which is kind of the love song. Because I knew, like, Philip's background was rock, and I knew he could do a rock ballad, but I didn't know if he could do a love song. So I gave him the hardest one first, and he came back, I think, in like a week or 2 weeks, and it was fantastic. It hasn't changed. I mean, a lot of the songs changed, but that one didn't change. A lot of people tried to get rid of it, though.
So I was already thinking it's pretty hard to write a song text for before you have the music piece. Like, how's that possible? How do you make that possible?
You have, yeah, I mean, when I write lyrics, I have a song in my head, and I know the feeling that I want to convey with the song. So I do have music on my head. It's not very good, but it's I know what I want to say. I know the emotion that I want, and then I give Philip the lyrics, and tell him what sort of song it is, and we play around with that. We don't always get it right the first time. Sometimes it doesn't work at all. We wrote a lot of songs because it's the first time for. Now Phil he's had a lot more musical experience than me, but for me it was the first time, and maybe for every song that is in the show we had 10, 15 that we didn't use. It's a lot of work.
A question about the audience. Do you think that the musical will have a different impact on the German audience than the Australian or the American audience?
I don't know. I'm not too sure. It's very hard to predict. When we were in New York and we had the first matinee, and all the people in the audience were old, and the director said, the music's going to be too loud for them, and they won't like it, and they'll all leave, or they'll fall asleep, or they'll leave. And they loved it. And I was sitting in the audience, and I said, we couldn't understand why they liked it so much. And it was good being there, so I could ask them, why do you like it? And they said, one fellow said, I love this show because it's my story, and nobody tells it anymore. So I don't know. I don't know enough about the what Germans look for. It's a human story, and we're all human, so I'm sure it'll work on that level. I think what's good about this show, and I think it's important for German audiences as well, because every movie I watch with Germans in it, they're the bad guys. And it's the same with me as well. Like, I'm Jewish, and I go to Jewish film festivals, and it's all on the Holocaust. And it seems like history is just focused on this very small part of your history and my history. It's just very narrowly focused. That you're the bad guys and I'm the victim. And I don't want to. That's only a small part of my history, and I'm sure it's only a small part of your history, and it's not all of our history. Anyway, I think what's good in Atomic is it doesn't really say these are the bad guys and these are the good guys. Actually, it was very important in the writing of it that I didn't do that. In the New York version, it probably did do that, and when I rewrote it, I was determined not to do that. And in the I can't remember what it was, but we had Q&As at some of the shows. I think in Michigan, we had a Q&A, and somebody said, the thing I find very interesting about this show was I don't know who the good guys are or who the bad guys are. And when I wrote it, I thought, whoever has the microphone, whoever's talking, I want the audience to think they're right. And then somebody else comes up with a different opinion, and you think, oh, hold on a minute, no, they're right. And the audience doesn't really know who's right. That was kind of important in the writing. And I think that's not done very often in entertainment pieces. They always say, oh, this is a bad guy and this is a good guy. So I think that'll be interesting for German people. But we'll see.
Yeah. So what's on everyone's mind right now is the Ukraine war.
Yeah.
So do you think that the audience will make these parallels between the musical and the Ukraine war?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's I don't know. It's I mean, it talks a little bit about how, you know, like Szilard's main concern for stopping the bomb was that he didn't want to give Russia an excuse for developing its own weapons. Like, I mean, one of the reasons that, you know, one of the motivations for America dropping the bomb was, you know, Russia at the time had taken Poland and taken Hungary, and they weren't giving it back, and nobody knew how to deal with Stalin. You know, he was a much more powerful leader than Truman. So the bomb was kind of like a weapon that they said, well, if you don't behave, we've got this weapon and we're not afraid to use it. So yeah, it's a lesson about escalation, I guess. But I don't know how to solve the problem with Ukraine. Yeah, like people need to talk to each other, I guess. Find out what the real problems are and try and solve them without blowing each other up.
So what made you want to write the story in the first place? What was your main motivation?
It was probably anger. Like I said, it was, you know, I came across this story about Leo Szilard, and, you know, I thought, why have I not heard about him? And, you know, the more I looked into it, there was an agenda to kind of hide him from the history books, because look, the army and the U.S. Army and the government. It was what was very interesting about the whole thing. It was nobody knew about it. It was the most secret project in history. Like even the vice president, Truman, when he was vice president, he didn't know about it. Roosevelt died. He had a brain aneurysm and he died. And then Truman became the president, and then 3 days after he became the president, they said, "Oh, by the way, we have an atomic bomb." He didn't know. He didn't know. So if he didn't know, nobody knew, and the public didn't know. After the war, it was really the government, and with the help of the military, wrote the history. Actually, there was a journalist who was employed by the government, who was fed all the stories, and he gave the stories to everybody else, and it was very tightly controlled of what the story was. And Leo Szilard was not part of the story because he didn't get on with the military; they didn't like him. Anyway, but I thought he was very important, and I thought I was angry that he'd been forgotten, and I thought, what can I do? Well, I can write something, so that's what I did.
Are there also maybe personal reasons? Or?
I guess so. Look, my grandfather was Hungarian, so I related to the character, and he was a refugee who left Hungary in '39, just before the war. He was Jewish, so I guess so. And I related to the character, I guess. I saw my grandfather in him a little bit. Yeah.
So it's a bit of solidarity action.
Yeah. And actually, it was very interesting. Like when we put the show in New York, the family of some of Trudy's family got in contact with me, and they said, "Oh, we heard you're doing a musical. We'd like to see it." They wanted like 10 tickets to the opening night, and I was a bit nervous, but they liked it. Yeah, and I'm still in contact with them. We get on very well.
Feuer! Ruf die Polizei! Mein Gott, der Reichstag! Der Reichstag! Wir müssen was tun!
Trude, beeil dich, mach auf, ich bin's Leo.
Leo, was ist?
Pack alles ein, wir müssen weg, sofort.
I want to talk again a bit about the topic anger.
Anger, yeah.
Anger, it's a great topic.
Yeah.
Do you think we can be angry about the people in the past that made decisions that led to the nuclear bomb? Or is it more like they lived their time and they could not have known better what happens after that?
Look, it's very interesting because you think, when you say, I mean, who dropped the bomb? You say, like, America dropped the bomb, right? I mean, we say America dropped the bomb. But if you look at who made the decisions, there were 3 people. It's not the whole of America. The whole of America didn't know. The generals, like Eisenhower, Curtis LeMay, they were all against the bomb. They said, I mean, Curtis LeMay was responsible for a lot of people getting killed. He was, they were bombing. I think they bombed like 67 cities in Japan before they dropped the 2 last bombs. And he felt if they drop the bombs, then the bomb will get the credit for the end of the war, not the Air Force. It was it was like 3 people. It was I guess the president, so Truman, but Truman was only just became president, and he didn't even know about the bomb. There was General Groves, who was in charge of the Manhattan Project, and he was very, he wanted to drop the bomb because that was his legacy. And there was I can't remember his name, but he was the Secretary of State, and he was. I mean, he's a very clever man, but and they all felt that they had to do it, but people died, but people die in war, so I'm sure they didn't have any regrets over it, but anyway.
But by hearing that, I'm asking myself, in this whole process, was it even possible that this bomb could not have been built? I mean, is there any chance that after Szilard's discovery, that we could live nowadays in a world without an atomic bomb?
Yeah, well, look, it's very hard to justify spending that much money. Like during a war, you can. I mean, during the war, it was given I think a AAA rating, which means unlimited budget. It was like $2 billion in that time. It's unbelievable how much money they spent on that. I mean, they built cities. They built cities to process the uranium. And, you know, all the people in these cities didn't know what they were doing. They weren't told what they were doing. But it was, yeah, I can't remember what we were talking about. But whether
Was it inevitable?
Was it inevitable?
That the bomb was built?
Look, I think the knowledge was inevitable. So, yeah, you know, people would have known it was possible. Whether countries would have put that much money into building a bomb, but they did. I mean, Russia did, and China did, and yeah, lots of people are doing it now. Once somebody has it, then yeah, everybody wants it. Whether, I mean, there's the other question of whether America had to drop the bomb. And that's a very interesting question.
That's
I
right.
don't know
Yeah.
if you want to go there.
No, you don't have to answer that. But maybe one last question to conclude all this we have been talking about right now. You wrote the story. You had many thoughts in your mind while writing that. Is there any one single most important core message you want the audience to get while watching this play?
Yeah, well, I kind of say it in the show, but yeah, so yeah, there is, and it's that we're all human. I mean, so what the story is to me, like the most interesting thing about the story is to me is you have military people, you have scientists who are refugees from another country. You have all sorts of people, all working together to do one thing. You know, they don't even like have a common language, but they have a common goal. And you know, and we can overcome our differences to work together on one thing. You know, and yeah, I mean that's what humanity is to me. It's the connections that we have that that we can talk to each other and work together and do, all work towards the common goal, even though we're very, have very different backgrounds. I think that's the lesson of Atomic, and that's what I want people to get from it.
It's a great last statement.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your insight. It was really interesting, and I've learned a lot. Personally, I think Matthias learned a lot too.
Yes.
Yeah. And we'll switch back to German. Alright, also im Folgenden werden wir mit dem Regisseur hier an der Schule sprechen. Ein englisches Musical inklusive Songs auf Deutsch zu übersetzen, ist eine sehr schwere Aufgabe. Wie das gelungen wurde, erfahren Sie jetzt gleich.
Schreib eine Hausarbeit in Medizin. Komm, hilf mir doch bei der Anatomie.
Ja, also wir sind die Regisseure. Ich bin der Julian Goletzka.
Ich bin Marc Wiedermann.
Also das heißt, ihr habt wirklich überhaupt eigentlich alle Freiheiten gehabt bei der Umsetzung und er hat einfach nur gesagt, ja, macht mal, und jetzt weiß er selber noch gar nicht, was genau passiert.
Das klang schon im Englischen fast so, und dachte ich, okay, dann nehme ich jetzt ein Faustzitat, weil es einfach super passt. Die Atombombe, und wir haben da irgendwie Drohung mit nuklearen Waffen. Ich glaube, jeder, der ein Gehirn hat, kann die Verbindung zusammen. Durchaus, als das Ganze losgegangen ist mit dem Krieg, hatten wir ziemlich genau dann am Wochenende eine Probe. Und da ging es auch in der Szene, wo das auch durchaus thematisiert wird. Und da haben wir auch einfach erstmal uns eine Stunde hingesetzt.